All right. Fingers crossed that we will have decent internet today. Seems to be all right so far. I do have coffee in process. Well, I tell you what, the news is bleak and disgusting and bleak again. Just very bleak. Let's move this a little closer, shall we? I'm never like the cheeriest, most optimistic person, just generally. But yeah, lately it's not good because boy, it sure feels like our government is being run by perverts and people who are protecting perverts. And in many ways, I'm totally cool with perverts. You know, a lot of them are very fun, very cool, interesting people. There's nothing wrong with it necessarily. But the kind of perverts we're talking about, not the kind of perverts that I'm alright with. And it's just, look, I'm hardly the first person to point out hypocrisy on the right. And even, you know what? Even Democrats. I'm not. I got no love for the Democrats. I don't need to defend them. But these people suck. These people bloviate about how they're all about protecting the children and the sanctity of life and the sanctity of marriage, and all these foreigners, frankly, are destroying the American way of life and at the end of the day, these people are child touchers covering up for other child touchers in search of power. Or, in fairness to some of these lower level perverts, they may be trying to make sure they get covered for, right? Like, if I don't talk, if I just say it's all nonsense, then the people above me who could dime me out, right? They could put me in the hole, so to speak. They'll defend me because I'm defending them. I'll tell you what, that seems like that's been the strategy for the last decade and a half about the cabal, as it were. Because it's both sides. I mean, I am in no way going to equivocate. And I'm not going to say the Dems are as bad as the Republicans, because they're not. They're bad in many ways, and they're useless in many ways. And they gave us Trump, and, you know, they hate the left and would rather try to cater to 4% of the Republicans that might be willing to change their mind than the, you know, undecided voters who are, like, hurting financially. But with that said, they are not as bad as the Republicans. That would be ludicrous. But in this, they're both sides are responsible, right? There are Democratic leaders, fucking Noam Chomsky, right? Who is, I don't know if he's a Democrat. I don't know what exactly his political ideology would be, but he is widely appreciated on the left, right? So I would assume that Chomsky would be on the Democratic side of the aisle. I'm going to go check my coffee. I'll be right back. All right. Coffee actually drained in under 10 minutes today, which is a real treat for me. It's still decaf, so it's only so much of a treat, but Peter, I've moved, got married, and I have a job. I have a day job now. Technically I have a morning job. So I've pretty much quit doing music stuff. That's maybe something I will come back to for one-offs. I've done a couple in the last few months, but I started feeling like that was not a very useful way for me to spend my time. So I have pretty much stopped. I haven't stopped listening to new music. Rest assured, I continue to be on the hunt for new stuff to listen to. But as far as consistently doing YouTube stuff, I get off work. I go to work at 3:30, 4 in the morning. So usually when I get off, I'm coming home and going to bed. So yeah, I mean, I do try to stream occasionally these days. Oh, that's cool. What kind of music are you making? Thank you. It's a bad time in America for many reasons, but I am grateful that I am employed, and that I have somebody to help me split the costs of life with, right? Among other things. We get along very well. I like her. She's very smart. But yeah, it's been a change, of course. I haven't had a roommate since I was in college, really. Yeah, just out of college when I was living in LA. So that took some getting used to. But I'd say we're at a pretty good rhythm at this point. And we're in Colorado now, which is a much to the 10th power, much to infinity. I can't really, so much better that I can't explain it. So much better than where we were before. Just basically across the board. Quality of life, weather, things to do, accommodation. It's just better. It's just better to be here. And we're pretty happy. It's more expensive, trying to adjust to that, trying to figure out how to keep the budget looking good. But we're figuring it out. Now you are you're in Poland, correct? That's what I remember. Um, about your location. There are so many parts of Europe I would still like to visit that I haven't been able to see myself. My partner's been to Hungary. She's been to Budapest. Well, Buda and Pest. I know they're two different cities. And she's been to Serbia. And the farthest east I've been, I think, is Germany. So, close. But, I talk about it occasionally. But I'm just so interested in everywhere and the lives that people live. Well, I mean, it's a good thing because for a while Poland was going to be part of Germany and there weren't going to be any Polish people in it. One of the few like unqualified good things I can say about my country is we didn't join the side of the Nazis in World War II. We waited until now to do it. And I'm not afraid of anybody. I lived in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is bigger than Poland, I think. That might be That might be actually true. I'm not afraid. I'm big. I'm not an idiot. I mostly don't go places that could be dangerous. Okay, so California is bigger than Poland. Los Angeles is 13 million. So yeah, I'm not worried about that. A lot of times people who are worried about that are people who have not spent much of their lives around non-white people, in my experience. The people who are really worried about their safety. I lived in South Central Los Angeles, which is a place that was known for the LA riots in the 90s and stabbings. And I was fine. It's just, I thought Germany was fine. Obviously, I wouldn't have wanted to be there in the 30s or 40s, but modern Germany, pretty clean, pretty cool. I know a lot of people are opposed to immigrants, and I look, I don't respect that. Flatly, I do not respect an anti-immigration position. It is, it's just racism, right? It's just racismo. I am pro-immigrant. Which, shouldn't be that remarkable of a statement, but as an American at this point, it kind of is a notable thing to not be afraid of non-white English speakers. The legacy of America mostly is everything is built on white supremacy and free labor, which is why capitalism is such a problem to me, right? Because capitalism really relies on free / exploited labor. Not necessarily free, right? They might pay the workers, but exploited. You look at the prison system in America, for example, and in the prison system, people are required to work. It's not optional, it's mandatory. You are required to work. And you technically get paid, but you get paid pennies per hour. I mean, like 15 cents an hour, 20, maybe $1 an hour, right? So you're making zero money, and you are producing effectively for free goods that then get sold to regular consumers. And that's a legacy of capitalism, because when slavery goes away, right, the need for cheap goods doesn't go away. The desire for capitalists. No, there's actually it's just modern slavery. I mean, I think I understand what you're saying, but it's just exploitation. It's just saying, because here's how it works, right? Then this is part of the war on drugs. It's part of anti-black racism in America, but we get to the point where you say, okay, we no longer have legal free slaves, right? We no longer have just labor that cannot fight back, right? Or cannot, that has no rights. We no longer have that after the Civil War. Slavery's abolished. But we don't want to pay anymore to produce the goods that we've been producing. You know, maybe our business won't support it, which if you run a business that can't make money without free labor, your business should go away. You have a bad business. If you need free labor to make your business work, your business isn't that good. Right? Anyway, that's my opinion on it. What happens is you start creating new laws and new sentencing for things that were maybe not a crime before, or things that were a crime, but now they get bumped up in severity. Marijuana, cocaine, heroin, that stuff was all legal in the U.S. for a long time, like into the 1900s. I'm not saying that heroin should be legal, okay? I'm just saying that sometimes alcohol, similarly, was legal in the U.S., and then they made it illegal, and then they made it legal again. Okay, so legality is fluid. Sometimes it's legal, sometimes it's not legal. Really, it just depends on who's in charge and who's making the laws. And if we start making a bunch of laws that start giving long prison sentences to people, and then those people have to work for us for free, or basically free, in prison, that seems like a negative incentive, right? Because then you have an incentive to put more people in jail, because that's more free labor. And I'm not alleging a massive conspiracy. I'm just saying this stuff is not complicated. If we can get goods and products from imprisoned workers who we basically don't have to pay, then the only thing limiting us is the number of people we have in prison, right? The more people we have in prison, the more margin we can make on our goods and services. And like, let's take a look. Companies that use prison labor. Here's from Tufts. Tufts is a university. 4,100 companies profit from prison labor. However, in all likelihood, many companies are not on this list. The average of the minimum daily wages paid to incarcerated workers is 86 cents, while the average maximum daily wage is $3.45. So in America, the minimum wage federally is $7.25. In some states, people who are incarcerated are not paid at all for their labor. Now, I grew up Christian. I understand the concept of like restitution and punishment that reminds you that you shouldn't do the crime, right? I understand that. I've been an athlete my whole life. If I show up late to practice and my coach makes me run or makes the whole team run or doesn't let me practice, then I'm being punished for my shortcoming. And in order to avoid that in the future, I will be at practice on time. So I understand that argument, but this is not that. This is not like so that you can rehabilitate yourself. This is so you can make money for Amazon. Oh, this is just like an abstract, basically. Mission Investors Exchange. I don't know what that is. And again, if you look at the prison, if you look at the way it works in America, all right, so for one thing, a vast portion of our prison population in America is made up of Black Americans who make up 13% of our total population. Alabama profits off prisoners safe enough to work at McDonald's but too dangerous for parole. So what this says is the people that we have in jail, we will lease them out to McDonald's as workers. They can take orders, they can work in the kitchen, whatever. But they're too dangerous to be released. So they're not too dangerous to be in public working, contributing to society, if you will. But they're too dangerous for us to consider releasing them. And if we release them, we lose that labor. But we don't want to talk about that. See you. Thanks for hanging out. Have a good evening, I assume. I mean, Jesus Christ. They face possible punishment if they refuse to work. So again, these are workers who are coerced into working for whatever company it is. They are maybe paid, but they're also docked pay, right? So 40% off the top of all wages plus fees. Many prisoners work 40 hours a week, but then they're not allowed to have parole, but they are allowed to go home for the weekend. So again, you know, I feel like a crazy person because this stuff is really obvious, but a lot of people don't think about it, right? People just don't want to think about it. And businesses are making money. All right, what is this? Okay, so this is not saying you should invest in prison labor, which is good. I thought it would be about that. Like, hey, here's a sweet way to keep your margins high. You know, get into companies that use prison labor. It is fucked. There's really no way around that. How long have we been going? Where's my... There we go. 20 minutes. Jobs report came out today. Weirdly, seems to have been good, which may be legit. I don't know. I don't trust the government at this point to provide accurate numbers. I could be totally misguided. You know, I could be totally wrong that the numbers are really good and solid and I shouldn't worry about it at all. I'm reading the Wall Street Journal article about it. Trying to see if they've updated the unemployment rate. I am fortunate. UPS cut a bunch of jobs last month, but mine did not get cut. It's sort of a scary time to be precarious, I would call it, financially. We're doing okay. We're making it, but I don't like being on the edge, nor does my partner. But it's hard to get past that at the moment because there's just not a lot of good jobs to give you full-time hours and benefits. It's very frustrating. And, you know, the worst people in the world are making tons of money right now. Just, I mean, look, there is no God because this shit would not fly. This is not the proof for me that there is no God. I have other reasons to believe that, but, you know, as good a reason as any. You know, I have been thinking about going back and doing a breakdown of this guy I went to school with, because I haven't done that in a while, and I don't know that it's worth doing. Kind of, I want to do it because I'm a little mad. Somebody left a comment on one of my videos responding to one of Corey's things, and I got a comment about how he had more views than me, which is true. He did have more views than me. I don't think that makes it more right than me. Personally, I don't think that just because somebody has more views makes their content more accurate. But it certainly is fair to say that he had more views on his video than I did. Anyway, he has this like hour-and-a-half long video, or 45-minute long video, sorry, that I've been thinking about digging into. And he's just not that challenging on this stuff. But like, I'm friends with him on Facebook, and we have had conversations and arguments about what he thinks and what I think of that. But I do have respect for where I think his heart is mostly. I've brought it up before. I'll say it again because it troubles me. Okay? And again, I want to be clear. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. Okay? This is just one of those maybe a blind spot that comes from where and how you are raised. Okay, so I just want to make that clear. But when I'm having a conversation with somebody and they tell me that the only like reason that progress has been made in the world is because of Christians and like science and stuff, Christians pushing forward the sciences, I am concerned by that comment. Because again, it could totally just be blind spot. You didn't get taught about the developments in the Muslim world in the first millennium. You didn't hear about China, or Egypt, right? Maybe you just missed that stuff, and so it's not from a place of like superiority. It's just from a place of, well, I didn't get a deep enough education on this stuff. So it could totally be that. But the thing about that is, I know the white supremacists say the same thing. That is one of their positions. And if I was told that my position was the same as that of a white supremacist, I feel like I would want to have a very good reason for why what I believe is not for the same reasons as what a Nazi believes, right? It troubles me. But that aside, he does seem very disturbed by the current direction of the Republican Party, the conservative movement. He seems like he's sort of a more progressive style Christian, which I support. And so I don't necessarily want to just try and tear him down because he's a bad guy, because I don't think he is. But I do think that his justifications and apologetics for his belief system, I think they fall flat. They don't. He has been to seminary and law school, places that teach you how to argue, right? I did not do either of those things. I'm not a professional debater. I'm not a professional agnostic. I just know the Bible pretty well because I was raised very Christian, and like in a way that most people who say they're raised very Christian are not. My dad majored in college in biblical languages, so I grew up learning Greek, and I grew up with a father who could read the Bible we'll call it the original, in the biblical languages, right, in Hebrew and Greek. So a much fuller context and picture. And I value that. I think it was really useful to me. But it does mean that I can see the tricks that conservatives play because I was raised in that. I just don't think it's compelling anymore. I've been thinking about this one a lot recently. There's a verse that says, "The prayer of a righteous man availeth much." Now, what does that mean? It availeth much, or is very effective, right? If you want to get out of the King James language. What does that mean? Does that mean that a righteous man can pray for something to happen and it'll happen? Or pray for something not to happen and it won't happen? That if they pray for somebody who's sick, that they'll get better? Those claims are not made. It's sort of vague. But if it's not those things, what does it mean? What's the value of the prayer of a righteous man if he's not healing the sick? Right? I mean, because you don't need someone to pray for you. I mean, it's good for people to pray for you, but like God doesn't have extra. You don't get an extra pass to heaven if people are praying for you, right? It's just like you're supposed to pray for each other. That's commanded. But tangibly, what does it mean that the prayer of a righteous man is effective? Because if that were true, right, then there are men who I would consider to be righteous, right? There are men out there who are just, whether or not I agree with their belief in God, right? Which I don't. But regardless of my opinion on the existence of God, the way these men and women, but Bible's about men mostly, the way these men live their lives, the place they put their time, their values, their money, these are people who I would say are doing what they are supposed to do, right? They are living according to what the Bible tells them they should be doing. And that's a wonderful, I am all for that. All right? I'm all for it. But if their granddaughter got cancer, would their prayers cure her cancer? Would it keep her from getting cancer in the first place? Because that's not been my experience in the church. My experience in the church is that sometimes people get sick and die, and you don't know why. Sometimes kids get sick and die. There's nothing you can do about it. Sometimes you've got a lot of really righteous people praying for somebody, and they still OD. And so what is the value? What is the practical, tangible value of the prayers of a righteous man? Here's I think it's in James. Pray for one another. Yeah, James 5. Okay, this is the verse I was thinking about. Therefore, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person has great power. So, that you may be healed. So this is promising healing, right? I mean, that's as far as I can tell. This is promising healing. Let's just look at James 5 so you can see the verse in context. Come now, you rich, weep and howl. Boy, we don't talk about that very much. Be patient, therefore, until the coming of the Lord. The early church was apocalyptic, right? God's coming back. God's coming back within your life. He will come back, and he will take you back. Is anyone among you sick? Let him call for the elders of the church and let them pray over him. And the prayer of faith will save the one who is sick, and the Lord will raise him up. And if he has committed sins, he'll be forgiven. That's a nice bonus, along with not being sick anymore. This seems to imply that Elijah was righteous enough that he was able to pray that God would make a drought happen. Now, I'm not going to get too snarky on this, but prayer and magic words are effectively the same thing. I would have been very offended by that growing up as a Christian, but it's true. I mean, the magic words are not directed to God, right? Abracadabra, whatever other magic words throughout history. Prayer is directed to God, but it's the same exact thing. If I say the right words and I have the right sacrifice, maybe, right? You know who sacrifices? Witches. The druids, they're doing sacrifices. But if I have the right sacrifice, and if I am appropriately educated, appropriately righteous, and I make my prayer with the right words, then God will do something for me. And I just would ask, how is that different from magic? Right? Again, you could say, well, magic's not real, but God is real. Okay, but everybody says that about their God, and everybody says that their God can do miracles. And what are miracles but magic? Things that can't be explained or recreated by humans, or can't be done by humans without supernatural power. It's magic words. And so it is kind of funny to think about. This is effectively Elijah doing a rain dance, right? He prayed again, and there was rain. He did a rain dance, and God made it rain. I understand that's a little bit snarky, but it's said with genuine, like, think about it. Anyway, that's verse 17. So apparently Elijah was a righteous man. And I guess from this verse, I should assume that righteous people can keep rain from happening or make rain happen. But it says, if anyone among you is sick, let him call for the elders and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil, and the prayer of faith will save the one who is sick. That feels very specific, right? That's not vague or nebulous. That's not like and maybe something good will happen. That's direct. If you do this, God will heal you. And I can say with 100%, like personal knowledge, 100%, but people do this. People do this. And there are really thoughtful, committed Christians who are in the ICU, or they're in the emergency room, or they're at the bed of the people who are sick, and they are praying, and they put the oil on them even, and they do all this stuff, and God doesn't heal that person. And it's just curious because this feels like a promise, right? It feels like a promise. If I was reading that, I would say, the prayer of faith will save that. That seems like I'm being told God will do this. If I do this, if I do input X, right, then God will give me output Y. Now, I was raised not to believe God worked like this, which is convenient because you will see very quickly that God doesn't work like this. And if you think he's supposed to, that could shake your faith, right? Also, this one is interesting. We'll save, maybe it's the wanderer's soul from death. I don't know. The first few verses here talking about the rich seems awfully pertinent to today, specifically as an American person. But I'm sure I'm just overreading that because I'm woke. I also think James is one of the least attested books. I think this one is pretty widely considered to be at least like trying to claim the name, right? Not written by James. Also, here's another funny fact. It's just funny. James is not a Hebrew name. There is no Hebrew name of James. His name in Hebrew is Jacob. But when the KJV were translating the Bible into English, they wanted to let King James have a biblical name. So they just changed the name of the brother of Jesus from Jacob to James. So that's funny. Also, this is wrong here. This verse. God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. Because God does tempt people. It says multiple times that God tempts people. And then it also says that God sends a spirit of deception to keep people from being converted, which is big, complicated. But here's if anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. my partner was also raised the child of a preacher, so we have fairly similar backgrounds, and we have fairly similar feelings about Christianity, which is, although we don't believe in it, it was a very big part of our lives. And the sorts of things we were raised to believe were important are good things, right? They're good things. It's just that people don't do them or talk about them. And again, not to comment on right-wing hypocrisy, and at a certain level, all Christians could be hypocrites, because the idea of being a Christian involves living to a higher standard than the people around you. So you're going to make mistakes because you're a human, but because you are saying that you're trying to live your life in a way where you don't make those kinds of mistakes, people will point and laugh, right? And I don't think that's entirely fair. I think there's plenty of room for people to be committed as Christians and also still have anger issues, or also still have, laziness or whatever. But the bigger problem was the lust for power that we saw in the church, and the speed with which people sold out their Christian values to replace them with, I guess, American values, and the cruelty that went along with that. It was unpleasant to watch, because we both grew up respecting a lot of people in the church, and there are people in the church that I still respect, but it gets harder and harder when you consider what they're willing to put up with in order to gain power or access. It's very disillusioning. And when you talk about the stuff in the Bible that's like, woe to the rich, woe to the oppressors, blessed are the orphans, blessed are the poor, blessed are the humble, that's, you just don't talk about that so much anymore. And it's really disappointing. It's not unsurprising necessarily, but it stinks. So you show no partiality to the rich. Huh, interesting. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. If you show partiality, you are committing a sin. Interesting. What good is it if someone has faith but does not have works? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed, what good does it do for you to tell them to go be warm and fed? It's just, there's just a lot of verses you could point to that should convict people. But then what happens is you get told that you're not a good enough Christian or something. It's a real bummer, because I think there's a place for the church to do a lot of good in the world if the church wanted to give into communism, basically, because I'm going to wrap it up in a second, but so much of the message of the New Testament is basically communism. Obviously it's not like Marxism, but the idea of it's not good to be rich. You should, if you have more than somebody else, you should sell some of what you have and make sure that they're covered, right? If someone is poor, you should make sure they have clothing. Like, just this stuff is not capitalism, and I'm all for it. You know, if the church becomes the embodiment of that, that'd be fantastic. Woe to the rich. Is anyone among you suffering? Let them pray. Blah, blah, blah. Like, this is only in James. There are plenty more verses and places we could go to make this point, but I'm just already in James. Anyway, if I said those sorts of things, I would be tarred as a liberal. Can't bring this stuff up to my parents, you know, because what often happens with, I don't know, maybe some fairness, what often happens is you bring up a thing, be like, what about this? And they say, well, you're not doing that. It's not very productive. Also, I'm not a Christian, so I'm not required to do that. That's neither here nor there. But I am going to call it, wrap it up here. Probably won't stream. Well, I might stream tomorrow. We'll see. Probably won't stream again this week, but it's possible. But